Ladies and gentlemen, we're back at it again today. Today we are going to be talking about how to identify and draw tradable supply and demand zones versus poor, not tradable supply and demand zones. This is a very important concept for people to understand because there are so many traders out there trading supply and demand, and they're being fed, in my opinion, the wrong information. I mean, the whole concept of supply and demand is to identify where the big money is buying and selling, large imbalances, and we are trying to trade with them. And so I always make sure that I'm trading at tradable zones versus not tradable. So I made a little PDF and I am going to go through it as it's a criteria list that I need for every single zone to be tradable in order for me to actually start trading it. Because I get a lot of people that reach out to me and they're like, hey, can you look at a trade review? And I say, yeah, no problem. Send me a couple of trades and I'll have a look. And a lot of the time, they're not tradable zones, they're poor quality zones. So we are going to talk about that starting right now. So let's talk about it. Qualifying a supply zone. A drop-based drop or rally-based drop supply zone must fulfill at least one of the following two criteria for it to be considered a tradable zone. Number one, it must take out an opposing demand zone. Number two, it must be the zone responsible for the break of the momentum line or trend line, whatever you want to call it. And number three, strongly recommend this one, strong 2-to-1 imbalance move away. This is very strongly recommended because, hey, remember, we are supply and demand traders. If there's not a significant imbalance, that doesn't really tell us that there is a lot of buyers or sellers in that location. And then vice versa for demand. A demand zone must fulfill at least one of the following two criteria for it to be considered a tradable zone. Number one, it must take out an opposing supply zone. Number two, it must be a zone responsible to break a momentum line or trend line. And number three, the same thing, a strong 2-to-1 move away. Once again, strongly recommended. In fact, all my zones will be 2-to-1. We will get into examples. Now, if a supplier demand zone does not fulfill one of these three things, then we can consider it buying or selling. Now, let me ask you, should we be completely ignoring these zones? No. But these are not zones we want to be trading at. There are zones all over the chart, but we want to be very selective with our trading as there are certain zones that are higher quality zones. And just as a quick recap, if you guys aren't familiar with the four supply and demand zones, here they are. You know, we got the two supply zones, rally-based drop, drop-based drop, rally-based rally, and drop-based rally. Those are the four supply and demand zones that we trade. And you'll notice that they all have a significant imbalance. Once again, going up to number three, strong 2-to-1 imbalance, right? Big move leaving that zone, all right? This has been tested many times. I've gone through like all my trades, thousands of trades early on, and I was trying to figure out, what's the difference between my winning trades and my losing trades. And what I noticed was all my winning trades, a higher percentage of them were trading at quality tradable zones that removed an opposing zone, broke momentum with strong moves away, right? These are just two to three criteria that we look for when they become tradable zones, right? So that's why we want to be trading at quality zones. Now, let's get into a trade or a chart, I should say. Because first thing we do, we got to look at supply and demand zones. And since I guess we'll just keep my watch list from yesterday going, and just so I know that these things are already marked out, and I'll kind of talk you through it about why I would mark out certain zones. All right. Right away, this supply zone jumps out to me. Why? It's a drop-based drop area of supply. Very strong move down to the downside, went over a 2-to-1 relative to the size of the base here, right? So that's the base. Okay. Very strong move to the downside. So it went over 2-to-1. That is letting us know that there is a significant amount of sellers. Okay. It also is in a downtrend, which is a bonus, but it also removed demand here, removed demand here, and it removed demand all throughout here as well. So it's definitely removed zones. It's continued that trend to the downside. It has an over 2-to-1 move away. So I like it to be a tradable zone. Now, I'm not going to get into, what's the top-down analysis, how to determine trends, how do we draw momentum lines. Luckily for you, already have that all laid out for you. We are going to get into more examples because I know you guys still have questions about this. But for more information, you guys can go to my YouTube, click playlist right here, and then go over to tips down here. Tips, this is going to be covering the whole supply and demand methodology, part 1, part 2, part 3, what is supply and demand, how to identify zones. So strongly recommend checking out this playlist and then going through the videos that interest you the most. They are videos that I strongly recommend all supply and demand traders. I explain them really well, and you guys always reach out to me on social media telling me, hey, you really like those videos. So thank you guys for watching. I appreciate that. Now let's get into another example. And then, hey, if you guys are enjoying this video, I really do appreciate if you guys just like that button right now, and you can always subscribe to my channel. All right, so I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. And you guys can always reach out to me on social media at Moneyball Austin. Okay, so USD Mexican. Why was I looking at selling opportunities back up into this supply zone for the last couple days? Okay, well, once again, when it comes to identifying supply and demand zones, we have to make sure that this is a tradable supply zone, right? So we have a rally base drop, one very strong move to the downside. Look, it took 1 to 2 candlesticks, maybe 3 candlesticks to go 2 to 1. That's what we want. We don't want price like here. See how it's grinding down? We don't want that. That does not tell us that there is a lot of sellers coming into the market. If there is a significant imbalance between buyers and sellers, don't you think that there would be a strong move to the upside or downside? The example I always give is if you look at since the FIFA's going on, you look at England versus Iran. England stomped them like 6-2, 6-1 or something like that, right? There is a significant skill gap between the two teams, right? Now, also I could get into an example, Argentina. Argentina just lost to, what was it, Saudi Arabia or something like that? And they were like the heavy favorites. They're like the top 3 or 4 teams to win it versus one of the teams that's supposed to be the first out. Now, an analogy I could give for that is always in trading, keep in mind that the best zones can fail and the worst zones can work out, right? So don't get attached just because it has a set criteria. It has to be a winner. So we have a very strong imbalance to the downside. We also removed an area of demand here, so it's a tradable zone. Okay, perfect. Let's go to another one. Let's go down to, let's look at oil. What do we got going on here? Those are old, so let's go on to pound yen. Okay, what was I looking at here? Okay, so this is the daily time frame. Why am I drawing out these supply and demand zones? Okay, well, first off, we have a rally-based drop supply zone that broke upward trend line, but also removed these opposing demand zones in here, poor quality demand, as well as we have a strong move to the downside. So that's exactly why I want to be trading that supply zone once prices come back up into it. Now, am I going to trade the whole thing? No. But like I said, watch those tips videos and you can get a better understanding of what I'm trying to do. Same thing with this supply zone, same thing with this demand zone. Look, very strong move to the upside, short time. It didn't take 10 candlesticks to make a 2 to 1 move. Okay? These are criteria that will help us determine quality over quantity. Okay? Let's see, like over here, I don't see any great areas of demand in here. It's just grinding up. That's not something I want to trade. Here, very nice imbalance to the downside, right? Here's a tip for you guys. Don't scroll in. I see new beginners making this mistake all the time. They scroll into their charts like this and they widen everything. They're like, oh, well, we got a really good supply zone right here. It's like, no, scroll out, get a big picture of what's going on. Scroll out of your chart, right? That's going to let you know where these significant buyers or sellers are when they're stepping into the market, right? So I like that supply zone. I am going to draw it out on my chart. Obviously, it's an old zone, so let's continue to the next one. New Zealand yen, weekly time frame. That is a weekly supply zone. It broke upward trend line, higher highs, higher lows. It broke that upward trend, so it is considered a tradable zone as well. It has a strong imbalance to the downside. All right, we look at coffee. All right, weekly time frame. Look at this demand zone that I have marked out. Very strong move to the upside, rally-based rally demand zone. It has obviously removed supply from way back over here, remove supply here, remove supply here, right? So it's definitely a really good area of a weekly demand. Plus, it's going to be reacting off of the 200 moving average as well. All right. Now, am I going to go off and start trading at this weekly supply zone? No, it didn't remove anything. The imbalance is nothing special yet, right? So it's not something I'm going to keep on my chart. Rather, I would rather have this area of supply kept on my chart. You know what I mean, guys? So actually, I would encourage you. This is why journaling is so important, to actually journal your trades, because I wouldn't be able to figure out these stats if I didn't journal my trades. Okay. CAD USD, it's going to be reversed. But sure, we could do that. Weekly time frame. All right. That's a nice weekly area of supply that I like. It's removed demand, demand. It's got over a 2-to-1 imbalance to the downside. So it's a tradable zone. Okay, I like it. Okay, we switch time frames. You might be thinking, what about the 1 hour? What about the 5 minute? Let's go down to the 5 minute. Sure. Okay, well, that doesn't look good. Since it's inverse, let's go to USD CAD. All right, there we go. USD CAD. All right, where are we going to be drawing out our supply and demand zones? Personally, I'm not too big of a fan of this, but I really like this demand down in here. I like that area down there because this area of demand has broken downward momentum. We've also removed an area of supply, right? We have a good imbalance to the upside, so I like that demand. As for supply, you know what? Yeah, I would mark this one out as my 5 minute supply. Okay. But what I'm not doing is I'm not going around calling all this supply. I'm not going to be calling anything in here supply or demand. It's all basing. It's not very good. All right. That's not what I want to see. I want to see big imbalances, removing opposing zones, clean, clear, obvious zones. Right. That's a big tip that I can give to you guys. I've given you guys a lot of information, so I recommend rewatching this again and writing down the top 5 things. I actually have a question for you guys. Since the World Cup has started, who are you cheering for in the World Cup? Personally, because I'm here in Mexico, I'm rooting for Team Mexico, but I hope my home country of Canada does well because it's good for business. So you should always cheer for your home country. Helps out your local neighborhood, helps out the local businesses. So it is good for the country. I wish them best of luck. But since I'm here in Mexico, I'm rooting for Team Mexico. All right. So let me know what team you guys are cheering for. My secondary team is going to be Spain, and I hope Messi pulls through and makes a good run as well. If you guys would also like a free training on a masterclass where I share my tips on all this stuff, check out moneyballtrading.com. All that information will be down below, where you will also get an ebook as well as a bonus for going through the class of the supply and demand methodology. And once again, I really appreciate if you guys like this video. Much helps me grow this channel. Subscribe, and if you have any questions, you guys can always reach out to me at Moneyball Austin and ask for help. All right, I will see you guys in the next one. Cheers. Bye-bye.